We've got a heap on.
We're going? When we've sorted out your headphones...
How am I going to get my ear around that?
Like that, Mark. All right. Tell us why Josh is not here and what we're doing instead for this week at Crim City.
Welcome to Crim City. I'm Mark Morrie from the Daily Telegraph. Josh can't be here because he's now a father of a very young baby, and we're going to get into it.
And what are we doing with Crim City this week?
We're going to go back to an old interview that I did with Joe Doueihi, one of Sydney's, if not Australia's, most experienced police officers. Now, he talks about there was a spate of kidnappings in Sydney related to the underworld and drug dealings that shocked even Joe, who had covered probably some of the most violent murders in his time. He's seen some of the cruelest acts human beings have committed against each other. And he said what he saw was right up there. We had people having their fingers removed, their teeth pulled out with pliers without anaesthetic, I've got to add. So talking to Joe, it was a real eye-opener because I've known some of the cases that he's covered, and when he said this was violence that he had never really encountered, it shocked me.
Cool. Good to go.
All right. So just a brief, Joe, you've been in cops how long?
So I've been a police officer now for 34 years.
And you've worked through the ranks and ended up a detective working the cross.
Yep.
You did a fair stint in homicide too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. So I started my service in King's Cross as a general duty police officer, progressed through the ranks to detectives at King's Cross. The early 90s I joined crime agencies, what was known as crime agencies back then. Then over the next 25 years I probably worked about 15 years in the homicide squad at various ranks. I was Detective Senior Constable, Detective Sergeant and Detective Chief Inspector at the homicide squad. I also worked in the Firearms and Organised Crime Squad at State Crime Command for about 5 years until I got my current position as the Commander of the Robbery Squad. Robbery and Serious Crime Squad.
Crime. And you look after kidnappings and amongst other things, fugitives, all sorts of things. So I was just going to say, like, it's 2023. It kicked off, I think, around February that we started hearing about some kidnappings. And I think over the next couple of months, we became aware of at least 6 sort of kidnappings that were particularly violent. There was one that I think there was 3 kidnappings linked to one alleged cocaine rip-off. Would that be right to say?
Yeah, so that would be Strike Force Merrillee.
Yep.
It relates to 3 separate kidnappings of 3 separate people over 2 days. The motive of those kidnappings was alleged to believe the fact that a large quantity of prohibited drugs had been stolen, and the organised crime syndicate or network that those drugs belonged to took steps to try to recover those drugs.
Now, one of the victims in this, I believe, was a guy that was found, and that came to the first one that really hit the headlines early, was a guy found with, I think, a finger had been mutilated, and he had acid thrown on him as well, wasn't it? That's related to that alleged kidnapping, wasn't it? He was then dumped in an industrial area in Green Acres.
Yes, so that male was the 3rd person in a series of kidnappings under Strike Force Merrillee. He was abducted from St Mary's. He was kept captive for a day and a half, and then he was released in Greenacre. He had suffered some significant injuries. He had the tips of his fingers were severed, the tips of some of his toes were severed. He was beaten and he had acid thrown on him.
And he'd still be going through trauma now, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only has he sustained physical injuries, he's also dealing with the psychological injuries, which will last a lifetime.
So the other thing, I believe there was another victim, it was a female that was abducted involved in this and also underwent some physical abuse, fingers and that, and it was taken to a location tied to a tree. Would that be right to say?
Look, I can't say much about that other than yes, that is correct.
And that's,
and that's all I can say about that matter.
Okay, and then as I said, these were fairly brutal, these 3, and then I think the next one that Sydney just grabbed its attention, and this stunned me, is that there was the kidnapping of a young man called Peter Vaughan, I believe his name is, who happened to be, let's face it, he's an innocent sort of person who was associated with somebody targeted for a kidnapping. Now, I know there'd be a lot of covert sort of stuff involved in that, but I think it kind of started off with a failed attempt to kidnap him at one stage, wasn't there?
Yes, so that falls under Strike Force Kua. Peter Vaughn was the victim of attempted kidnapping a week prior to his actual kidnapping at his home address. On the particular day, the second attempt, the offenders were successful. There were six offenders, all males, 2 of them armed with handguns, 1 armed with a sledgehammer. All had their faces covered, wearing gloves and dark clothing. They forced their way into his family home in Smithfield, where they physically removed him from his bed, dressed only in his underwear, removed him from the premises and bundled him up into a car and then drove away. And he remained missing, abducted for 5 to 6 days.
Now, would that be correct to say they started to make demands for money?
They were making unreasonable demands to the associate of Mr Vaughn. They were asking for extremely large sums of money, in the vicinity of $5 million, and also large sums of drugs.
And then when did they start getting physical? Obviously, they sent photos. I was told they sent photos I've seen of him being beaten or of physical harm being done to the captor.
Yeah. Look, so throughout the entire ordeal, there were numerous forms of contact with the abductors, and within those there were a number of images and videos sent of the victim.
Do you have like an ops room set up, which you hear upstairs somewhere? Or? Yeah,
we certainly do. So in any type of major criminal investigation, we set up what we call a command post. Here at Police Headquarters, we have the Bill Cruise Room that's situated within the building. We kicked that off at about day 2 of this investigation. We all work from that one command, and we all work in the same location. It's a way of managing the job, and where all the information is funneled into one command post, where all the leaders of the specialist commands work together and decide and make those critical decisions on which way that investigation is going to progress.
So the whole time you're trying to find, obviously, would be where he's being held, I'd imagine. That would be your number one.
Absolutely,
but here, you're trying to negotiate to save this person's life. You don't know what these people are capable. Well, you know they're capable of because you've seen images.
Sure.
So it's really a race against the clock, isn't it, to try and find this person? So
in this particular case, it was a case of combination of technology and old school policing.
So informants?
No, it didn't involve any informants. It was just a matter of monitoring, working with the victim's family, tracking suspects' movements and so on, and then establishing where the location is that the hostage was at. The primary focus is the recovery of the hostage. We engage our specialist police, our tactical operations unit. We devise a plan. Once we are satisfied that the hostage is in those premises, we then action that plan and save the hostage.
So are you back here watching this all happen, I'd imagine?
So myself and the other commanders of the other units all working out of the command post here at Police Headquarters, and we're watching this unfold live through live footage that's been streamed up into the command post. So we have real-time observations of what's occurring in the field.
And so as I said, this is the story that I think captured everyone's imagination, because the length he was held, but when you went in, eventually it's found his teeth had been pulled out with pliers. I believe the allegations were that they were loosened with a gun, like a gun was put down there.
He'd been assaulted and beaten and had his teeth removed.
But
with pliers? Yeah, with pliers, yes.
And was he handcuffed or tied?
He was tied up during the ordeal. It was quite brutal and violent attack. I mean, you just imagine what force is required to remove someone's front teeth.
And then, do you know what his reaction was when the guys stormed in?
Yeah. So the tactical operations unit stormed the premises, found the hostage within the premises. He was a bit worse for wear, as expected, but he was obviously in a state of shock. We got him straight to the hospital to get medical treatment. So the investigation ran for 5 days. We became aware of where the hostage was detained on the last day at about midday on that day. It was almost immediately, within a couple of hours, that we stormed that premises and saved the hostage.
So normally in those situations, you normally do these massive risk assessments. Can take so long. You can't afford to do that when a guy's being talked
Look,
to.
a risk assessment, a dynamic risk assessment is being conducted on the run whilst the job's developing, and as I said, that's the benefit of having a command post where the commander of the tactical unit is in that command post with the commander of the robbery squad and other units, and we all discuss the information that's received and monitor the whole situation live, and decisions are made in that environment.
And for 5 days, I don't know, tough to think his. There's a guy here being tortured, and you've got to find him. Like, did you do 12-hour shifts?
No, it's
go home, or did you sleep here?
No one goes home. It's a 24/7 operation with every resource that is available is used for 24/7 for the whole 5 days. Obviously, we roster our staff in shifts. They work extended shifts and long hours for those 5 days.
Just not sleeping at all, is it? You've got to
No, well, I mean, police are human. They need to get a couple of hours sleep a night, and that's what was happening. And we'd have relieving shifts come in and take over for the day shift. And
was there kind of like a cheer when?
That was absolute elation in the command post. That 5 minutes or couple of minutes whilst we were watching the tactical team enter the premises, and then when we got the notification that the hostage was safe and well, it was very intense.
Emotional.
Very intense moments and emotional. Yes, it certainly was.
Some guys and people that try not to be too emotional. You can't help it.
Yeah, no, you can't help it. But it was it was very good feeling at the end of the day that you've saved.
Would be one of the more satisfying jobs for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But this is the first time I've ever. The brutality of this is probably the worst I've in my 40 years reporting. Have you ever seen this sort of violence?
I would agree with you. The level of violence is unprecedented. I personally say I haven't seen that level of brutality occur.
And you've covered underworld crimes, murders,
Yep.
haven't you? Right. As I said, this is just. As I said, it took it to a new level. I thought.
It certainly did, and it's part of the abductors' way they operate. They torture their hostages in order to obtain some specific goal, whether it be a financial goal or to obtain information from the hostage in relation to where certain things are, where their drugs may be taken, where money may be stashed. It's a form of obtaining that information by torturing the hostages. There's a clear distinction between an organised crime kidnapping where the hostages are kidnapped purely for the purpose of obtaining some form of drug or cash, opposed to an opportunistic kidnapping where a group of offenders just decide to abduct the person because they believe that person has substantial amounts of money.
How many kidnappings do you reckon that you guys investigate we never hear about?
Look,
like the media.
I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but there are a substantial number of kidnappings.
Right. And there'd be a lot of these guys that don't report them.
Absolutely. We see and we've received reports of kidnappings occurring where a hostage has been kidnapped, a family's paid the ransom, and the hostage has been released, and we only find out about it post release of the hostage.
World, it's almost it's a money earner for some, isn't it? And we're finding now there are little teams that go out.
Yep.
They're the muscle to go and do these kidnappings for the high-level crim guys, aren't they?
What we're seeing is the different levels of involvement in these types of crimes. Offenders are working for other offenders. They don't know who they are. They communicate through encrypted applications. Jobs are put out on encrypted applications seeking crews to do a specific job where they're paid
They advertise on like WhatsApp
groups? Yep, it's an advertisement scheme where they advertise for a crew to abduct a certain person, and they'll pay them X amount of money, X amount of dollars, and that's basically how it is. And they don't know who they're working for.
Right. So you are resolving these things pretty.
Yeah. So we had.
You're having a high success rate in some of these.
We are. So one of our recent investigations, Strike Force Lativium, involves the kidnapping of two separate males. this year, and a conspiracy to kidnap a third person. That's been quite successful, where we've arrested 3 people initially, and only today I can indicate that another two offenders have been arrested for their involvement in both kidnappings and a conspiracy for a third.
Didn't you stop the guys at Bass Hill, didn't you? Was that you guys? Roberts, who were going to go and kidnap?
No, look, if we're made aware of a potential kidnapping that's going to occur, it's incumbent upon the police to take some type of action to prevent that offence from occurring. And generally, as a matter of course, we would make an approach to that potential hostage or potential victim, and put that person on notice that, hey, we have information that you may be at risk and your family may be at risk.
Who they are.
No.
They
No.
You just go, mate. It's like if there's a contract, it's a duty of care or something.
Absolutely. Our duty of care applies to the whole community, regardless of whether they're a Joe citizen or whether they're a criminal.
Thanks to listening to Crim City. Mark Murray here from the Daily Telegraph. Josh Hanrahan probably nursing his baby. The executive producer is Dan Box. The sound is from Marty Peralta.